Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today is Anne Alexis. Anne Alexis is a holistic life coach and an emotion code practitioner. We're going to be talking with her today about what is the emotion code. You can find out more about Anne Alexis and her wonderful work at her website, www.coachannealexis.com. Welcome, Anne Alexis.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.
So here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, we interview experts in natural healing from all over the world. And one of the things we do is we talk about different techniques. Anne Alexis, what exactly is the emotion code?
The emotion code is a method invented by a Dr. David Bradley that is utilized to release trapped emotions that get lodged in the body system energetically when we have events or experiences, traumas that are difficult for us to emotionally and energetically digest. So this practice goes right to the root source of a lot of the behavioral and maladaptive addictions and behavioral patterns that we'll adopt in life. It gets to the root of those concerns and really pulls out those weeds from the base, releasing trapped emotions. Non-invasive, doesn't involve having to deep dive or re-traumatize through the sharing of really intense and emotional stories. So over the years, I've found it to be one of the most effective methods that I've used in really getting people who feel stuck, really getting them reintegrated back into their sense of self and removing that feeling of sort of like knowing that you've got more inside you, but not quite being able to reach out and grab it.
So, Anne Alexis, emotion code practitioner, how does the emotion code actually work?
It's a process of tapping into the subconscious and having a direct conversation with it about the most prominent concerns that are being activated at that time. So that's why it's not invasive. It's just a communication that's had with the subconscious, which is a storage space for everything that's ever happened to us in all of our lifetimes. So things that might not even be existing in this particular life could still be impacting us as energetic carryover from experiences that we've had in the past. We know that energy is not destroyed or created, that it's cyclical in how it moves, but a lot of times we don't think about that in the framework of our spirit or our soul, the energetic body field that makes us up. So that eternal element of who we are is sort of like a record keeper. And by going through that record keeper and removing specific files, we can do some real deep cleaning, emotional deep cleaning that helps us to show up in a way that we can be more conscious and aware and present in the moments that we have, as well as ways that make us feel like we are being more authentic and genuine in how we're showing up.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, in my work as a medical intuitive healer, I talk about the 5 levels of healing. So what are the 5 levels of healing? The physical body, we think we know where that is, your bones, your muscles, what you can touch, what medical science can measure. Then you have your energetic body, which is your chakras, your acupuncture system, and the breath. And then there's the emotional body, which is the largest part of us the mental body, which is your thoughts and beliefs, and then finally your soul. Now, what I find in my work as a medical intuitive healer, and this is quite interesting, is that whenever we have an emotion, so you're feeling an emotion, you're conscious of it usually for about 6 days. And then what happens to us as human beings, if we don't process out that emotion, if we don't resolve those emotions in whatever way is necessary, then it starts to get suppressed and repressed, and it goes into our unconscious mind. And then after 21 days, it actually gets stuck in our physical body.
Wow.
And so in my work as a medical intuitive healer, I have 31 years of experience. There's all these different techniques where we deal with emotions, and depending on sort of where a person is in the emotional process. So, Anne Alexis, you are an emotion code practitioner. How does an emotion code session differ from talk therapy?
That is a fantastic question, and I want to start by saying that's fascinating research. That timetable, even when you speak to it, I can feel the resonance of
Yeah.
that when I think about, especially when it comes to things like spiraling thoughts and how those will take plant and root after we've had an intense experience. But Um, it differs from talk therapy in the way that it does not require any kind of conscious communication about the issue in order to remove it. Talk therapy really resides on that foundation of, we're going to have a discussion about what happened. We're going to walk through elements of it. What could you control about the situation? What could you not? How is that impacting you and making you feel, and how you're showing up now? How do you see it manifesting? This doesn't require any of that. A person can come in as a complete blank slate, in the sense of the fact that their consciousness might not even be aware of any traumas. Because that's one of the things that we do so often, is we disassociate when we're having trouble digesting an event that is overwhelming. We will actually disconnect from that spirit body element. So we have so many traumas that even will be hidden from our consciousness. What's great about this work is, because you're having a direct communication with the subconscious, you're not required to do any of that therapeutic communication where you're revisiting those traumatic experiences. You're welcome to, when they come up in a session, if you want to. But the requirement of ridding yourself of the impact of that trapped emotion does not require that. And that's one of the most promising elements, because especially these days when people are so overwhelmed, Catherine, and I'm sure that you see it in the work that you're doing every day, people are just so overwhelmed that they don't even really know where to begin. It's really wonderful for that. People will come in completely speechless. Like, I just don't have any words. I just am not here and I don't know why. I just can't be here and be present in this moment and enjoying my life. So it's really helpful when people can't pinpoint specifically what they would normally talk about in talk therapy, because they're too overwhelmed.
Okay, great information. Now, Anne Alexis, what does an emotion code session actually look like? If somebody was going to observe you working with someone, what does that look like?
Right. So it can look in a variety of ways. Most of the work that I do is distance. So that means that we can participate via Zoom, just like this, or a phone call. Um, Sometimes if people are not feeling well, they will just set an appointment, and I can even send them what comes up in the session. So it can look like something that's done in person or via distance. You can be actively participating in your life, but the preference is always to be in a calm and safe space. Depending on what the focus is of work, it actually can be better to be participating in certain things. Like if you've noticed you've had creative blocks, then maybe while you're playing your instrument of choice or attempting to write or whatever creative block you might have, we can do a session during that allotted time to help remove whatever trapped emotions are directly related to that activity. But it really just looks like a person or individual sitting in a space and allowing themselves by saying consciously the words, I open up myself to releasing any trapped emotions that come to the surface. And then just taking deep breaths as I dive into that subconscious space and pull out whatever's hindering them the most at that moment.
So are you actually doing energy healing at that point?
There is a form of energy. There are forms of energy healing that I can incorporate to the healing process. Like I might add some elements of Reiki, or it might be necessary to balance a chakra or two before we're able to remove a trapped emotion. So, in a sense, yes, it is energy work because we are communicating with the subconscious or the energy body to work through other challenging to break up other challenging energetic bodies.
Now, in natural healing, as I'm sure you know, as a holistic life coach, there's many methods of releasing emotions that involve working on acupressure points or
Mhm.
flicking specific organs. So in the emotion code, is this a tapping technique? Is it flicking acupressure points? Is there any sort of physical touch that either you or your client does?
It is not a requirement, but just like I mentioned with the chakras, it may be required that that individual touch a specific point if it's called up in that session. Like if they've been having, sometimes you'll see it with reflexology points in particular, or elements on the neck or the back along that main meridian corridor that you just want to have someone draw physical and more conscious attention to, so you might have them touch that point. But it isn't a requirement of body code in the same way that it would be, or I'm sorry, of emotion code in the same way that it would be of acupressure or acupuncture.
Okay, fascinating. So again, what I find, and again, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, that emotions, when you first have an emotion, you have some sort of awareness of it, right? Even if you don't have words for it, it's like there's
Right.
a discomfort somewhere, right? But when we don't process it, it goes into our subconscious and then finally into our body. So, for example, there's a technique from a system of healing called total body modification. And
Mhm.
in total body modification, if I'm doing a larger healing, let's say I'm working on with someone to release trauma. So you find the emotion or emotions, and in TBM, what you would actually do, this technique is most helpful when the emotions have been buried so long, they're in your body. And so you find the emotion. So let's say it's self-destruct, okay? For
Right.
example, lots of people have self-destructive patterns. Well, then either the practitioner, meaning me, or the client, if I'm working long distance, I would show the person the organs to actually touch and then do an energetic release out of
Yeah.
those organs. So, as you know, Anne Alexis, part of doing healing work is identifying emotions. How do you, as an energetic code practitioner, identify what emotions someone's feeling?
Oh, that's a great question. That's where the chart comes in. A lot of times the chart is kind of elusive because the person doesn't ever have to look at the chart or see the chart. But yeah, the emotion code chart that is used is a collection of 60 emotions that are a reduction of um, the connections between energetic meridians used in traditional Chinese medicine. Um, we've got the spleen and the lungs and the gallbladder, the stomach, the triple burner, all of those organs have related emotions to them. And the emotion code chart reduces them down into these 6 blocks and or 10 emotions in these 6 block columns. So as I'm going through the process, what the client is doing is just sitting there taking deep breaths, but what I'm actually doing in that communication with the subconscious is asking, am I looking at an emotion that's trapped in column A or column B of this chart? Is it in even or odd rows? And then in each individual block, I'm muscle testing to determine which one of these 5 trapped emotions are we going to focus on at this point. And then there can be sometimes associated imbalances. It could be behind a heart wall or a hidden heart wall. We actually will subconsciously build those ourselves. And then have bricks stacked of trapped emotions that keep those walls up energetically. And then we find that we have difficulty connecting with people and building relationships in our life. And often that's due to having these heart walls or these hidden heart walls of trapped emotions. But yeah, we use an emotion code chart. That's a great question.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So in my work as a medical intuitive healer, I've got charts of emotions from all different systems of healing.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, so every organ is associated with different emotions, both positive and negative. So I've got the Touch for Health chart. I've got an amygdala chart when people go into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. I've got conscious, subconscious, body trapped. I've got total body modification, and then I have long lists of fears. And so you mentioned that the emotion code focuses on 60 specific emotions. So how are those emotions organized? Are they organized
They are
by,
organized using the organs, absolutely, as you mentioned.
right? And okay, so let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. We're listening to Anne Alexis talk about the emotion code, and we'll be right back. So in Alexis, as you know, in natural healing, there are many systems of healing that people can learn to practice for themselves. So for example, you can learn how to do Reiki for yourself. And with total body modification, if you have the information, you can release the energy out of your own you can release the trapped emotions out of your own body if you know what you're doing. Is the emotion code a system of healing that a person can learn to do for him or herself?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that makes it so powerful is how easy it is to use. Um, The chart can be found if you just Google emotion code chart. It will literally just pop up in images on YouTube. And it's using the technique of muscle testing. So there are a variety, at least 7 different ways that I can think of off the top of my head that you can do muscle testing, from using a pendulum to um, using fingers locked in rings, or testing the strength of the arm, the sway test. So there's a variety of different ways to do muscle testing, so it's easy to find something that you feel like you can connect with. And then anybody can access this chart, and all you're doing is really communicating with the body and asking it repeatedly, are there any trapped emotions that I can remove right now? And then having it lead you through the column work to locate which specific one it is. If everyone had this technique under their belt, the world would look like a very different place. Because once you're able to remove the built up trapped emotions, you're then able to usher yourself into a space of new framework in the mind. We think of it like the Roman Forum where you've got the grooves, from the chair, they're wearing down into the stone because they're passing over the same place over and over and over again. That's the way behaviors relate with trapped emotions. We get this trapped emotion, and then we just keep repeating this behavioral pattern over and over and over again, digging it deeper into our consciousness, right? And so, as well as our subconscious. So, what's wonderful about this is once you've removed those trapped emotions, your brain is like a blank slate. And then you can sort of, dare I say, like get back to that childlike version of yourself that lives life not worried so much about the validation of others, capable of seeing and recognizing what they need to meet their needs and feel well, that love to ground. I mean, if it's one image that we have of children, it's running around without shoes on. Like it's very natural for them, even just to ground as a regular part of existing. And there's so much trauma that we have that turns us away from being able to connect with that greater sense of worthiness and abandon and well-being, and really being able to trust fall into our life experiences. And so reestablishing the framework of the mind energetically, and then being able to create new and positive patterns along the rubble of those old roadmaps is really the gift that emotion code brings, without having to, like I said, have all the tools, know how to use them expertly, and deep dive into some of the more traumatizing experiences that we've had.
Wonderful information. Now, Anne Alexis, one of my 10 books is called The Difference Between Pain and Suffering. And in
Mm.
that book, I talk about, what is the difference? And pain is your physical experiences. They say pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, but sufferings are emotional experience. And when I'm doing healing work with my clients all over the world, if I'm working with anybody to release their physical pain, I always have to identify and release the emotion behind it. Because if you're not releasing the emotion at the same time that you're working on the physical pain, then you fix your neck, it goes to your ankle. You fix your neck and an ankle, and it goes to your hip, and so on, right?
Yes.
So my question for you is, how does the emotion code facilitate physical healing?
Well, you can set an intention for an emotion code session before you have it. And it's so true what you're saying. You'll even find that you might catch a cold or have something like reoccurring candida, or something like that, autoimmune disease, and you will find that these things are anchored ultimately in these trapped emotions. So it facilitates the release of physical ailments as well as illnesses by, when I'm looking at it through the subconscious, it's almost like this. I'm a visual person, and it's almost like you're digging down into a garden of someone's mind. You really are, and you're just trying to find that tiny little part of that weed that, like, you keep picking it out at the top, but that little teeny filament that's left just keeps sprouting into something new. So by targeting, when you have emotion code, by targeting specific physical ailments, you can go back to the places where they're emotionally rooted and take them out from that space. Then you can also use body code and belief code, which are other practices that are offered by David Bradley that can get even deeper.
So great information. Now you brought up the body code and the belief code. So what is
Yes.
the body code?
The
What's the
body
body?
code is a design. It also comes with a chart, but a much more involved chart where everything is looked at as, rather than being like you were saying, you've got these pillars of wellness. So with the emotion code, the focus is to target emotions. With the body code, it's just like in the name, it's designed to look at everything coming from the organs out and how things might be affecting from the organs out, rather than looking at how the emotions are stimulating and moving through the body system. We'll focus on the body first, because we all have different languages that we have with ourselves. Some of us are more emotional beings, some of us are more physical beings, some of us are more rooted in belief systems or mental beings. So, what these three different systems allow you to do is, if you see that a client, for example, is more physically oriented, more physically grounded, that's the language in which they communicate greatest with themselves. For example, a lot of times I find that my male clients will gravitate towards participating in a body code session because they're used to focusing on the body when they need to improve something. And then I'll find that clients that identify as female will often choose to go emotion codes first. Um, and so you do have these other elements that you can use to focus fully on just body systems and eradicating whatever dis-ease you have with those. And they'll take you through other systems. So you might be doing a body code session with someone, but in releasing an ailment in your elbow, you might find that you have these associated imbalances related to trapped emotions from emotion code.
And what is the belief code?
The belief code simply focuses on core belief systems that will lead us awry. Anything from I believe that I am not worthy to I have no will to live and everything in between. We are all indoctrinated into belief systems because we belong to a part of a culture. And that's what culture is. It's a collection of our belief systems as a group of people. And so some of those belief systems do not serve us in the best ways possible. I remember growing up, and I'd love to hear you remark on this, Catherine, if if a prominent belief system comes up in your mind. But I remember, like, my father always telling me, life is a struggle,
Mm,
right? Um, and or like my parents saying, "Oh, well, when you turn 40s, everything's downhill from there."
right.
You're just talking, so you don't even realize how deep rooted that's becoming in your mindset. Can you think of things that you've heard, beliefs that you've heard like that in your lifetime?
I feel that every human needs a healing on I'm good enough the way that I am.
Yeah,
I have enough. I do enough. And the largest cult in the world is the cult of difficult. And it is,
I love
it's
that.
true. So, but when you think about beliefs, because sometimes when I'm doing healing work with my clients, they'll be like, okay, well, this is not my problem, but you have to look at where do your beliefs come from? And before you're 5 years old, you're basically programmed, right? Women are this way, men are that way,
Pink
money,
rooms, blue rooms,
all
dolls
of it,
versus
right?
trucks.
And so you're programmed before you're 5, and so you just have no filter, and it's like, okay, you don't question it. So many of our beliefs come from our family of origin, and then come from our culture, and then come from our society. So just look at it's hard to lose weight, right? That's a big one, right?
Yep.
Right. Or as you mentioned, all the women in my family, when they get to be 35, this is the health issue that they have, right?
Yes. That's a huge one.
Yeah. So when I'm doing my medical intuitive healing work, I'm identifying what are the thoughts and the beliefs that are holding you back, right? A big one is I'm willing to get well. I have a whole healing on that I do on willingness, because
Yeah.
we get in our way in so many different ways, including emotionally, which is what we're talking about. And with that, let's take a break and listen to a commercial sponsor here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, and we're listening to the lovely Anne Alexis talk about the emotion code. So, Anne Alexis, as someone who works with the emotion code and helps people release these trapped emotions, and then you mentioned that the emotion code has a chart with 60 different emotions. What emotions do you find yourself working with your clients about most often?
Oh, wow. Helplessness and betrayal. Yeah, absolutely. Third would be abandonment. These seem to be, and especially I note them, and they're so easy to note because they're almost like not, I track everything. That's one of the things I loved about the numbers that you were throwing out earlier. So in 98% of the very first sessions of the primary session, the first three trapped emotions that are removed from people are those top three: abandonment, betrayal, and helplessness.
So tell us more about that. That's fascinating.
It is fascinating because it, number one, helps you understand that, yeah, like this makes a lot of sense. What's happening right now? Um, in our culture, in our lifetime, at this point in history, you've got people really just walking around, and there's what's being painted as a trend towards narcissism. What I believe it is really a call to help because people feel so undervalued. They feel so unseen, so unheard, just like not recognized in the intimate relationships of their lifetime, their familiar relationships, their work relationships, which is what happens when you create a system where you've convinced people that they're products. We treat each other like products. What, let me read the ingredients on the back of this, and if I don't like what's inside, keep it moving. Like essentially how social media impacts our minds. And so with that, and it's not to harp on like the negatives of technology, it brings amazing opportunities into our lives, like this one right now. This is not the point. How much authority we give away to things that don't serve us is the point. How much we allow these elements that are designed to condition our minds, condition us away from how we can show up authentically in our lives. Um, I'm not surprised because, yeah, I mean, I am not different. It was the first things that I emotion coded out of myself as well. Feeling underserved by in my entire environment is how everybody is feeling right now. Um, but what's beautiful of it is that, or about it, is that they're willing to let it go, right? Everything, I know this information because these are things that people want to throw away, cast out, and not deal with anymore, which is beautiful. I mean, it really doesn't get any more beautiful than watching people be willing to proactively heal and let go of what doesn't serve them.
Great information. Now, what you're really talking about when we're overcoming helplessness, we're helping people to take their power back.
Yes.
So, how can emotion code empower people to overcome helplessness?
Well, it immediately works by just targeting that trapped emotion and taking it out by the root. So when that energetic blockage, when that dark energy, that stagnant energy is removed from that space, it immediately creates a greater positive flow of chi, of energy, of life force, right? It's like unclogging an artery. And it's like you will feel better when I unclog this artery because it's going to allow all of this oxygen to get to where it needs to go to these organs. It's going to help your muscles get pumped up. So this is this is how it works from that energetic standpoint, and then you'll begin to just notice in the way that you feel less triggered doing the same things. People have often likened it to like a Zoloft. They'll be like, I just woke up and realized that I just felt more like me, or I just felt better all of a sudden. Because what it's allowing to happen is for that oxygen, that light energy, that breath of fresh air to get to those places that have been sort of getting pickled essentially by these negative ideas. And so more than that, once they're removed, they can't re-anchor. It's gone. And related to that event, you can have multiple trapped emotions of helplessness, but whatever trapped emotion of helplessness you acquired at the age of 11 when you were ganged up on at school, that's gone and it's never coming back. You're never going to have something pull you back to that space and put you back in that energetic emotion, anchor you back in that energetic emotion. So, lastly, it creates a space where people can then start to access their own intuition. The more you remove trapped emotions, the more you anchor in self awareness. And that really is a launch pad for learning about the body. um, just becoming aware this is happening, that's happening. So it's an ongoing process that continues to fortify you, empower you, map out a very clear way that you as a unique individual will follow to continue to embrace and take your authority back. Because that's what we're doing all day, right? Just giving our authority away and then being like, we're stuck in these patterns, but we've got to take it back. We've got to recharge ourselves back up from everything that we've been giving out, sort of power up, and then be able to take on the more challenging concerns that we have that are keeping us away from our greatness.
So, Anne Alexis, when I'm doing healing work and I'm doing emotional clearing, one of the things that I'll do is I'll trace back from the client's current age back through their life, and possibly to birth and possibly to past lives where these patterns started, right? Because as you know, if we have an emotion, especially if you have an emotion all the time, it's going to have earlier roots.
Yes.
How does the emotion code identify the age or ages at which emotional patterns started?
As you're going through those files of the subconscious, sometimes the emotion code will say, no, this trapped emotion can't be released. When that happens, you're prompted to ask more questions. Those questions will be things like, is there a heart wall, hidden heart wall? Is it related to a past life? Is it ancestral? Um, Dr. Bradley doesn't technically use past life. He uses the word prenatal, but it essentially means the same thing. So, if you have a trapped emotion that is being stubborn and seemingly doesn't want to release, these follow-up questions will lead you back into those spaces because, yes, that is very real. And what's beautiful about this work is when you remove something from the ancestral lineage, that trapped emotion is removed from all of the lineage. So it no longer perpetuates forward as you continue to procreate and build your family, but it's also taken out of the spirit bodies that are our ancestors still in existence in whatever form they're in now. So that's really beautiful too. That way, when you have issues and dynamics and loops that you see in your family, but dare I say, not everybody's on the bandwagon to doing the real deep work. Like, that's very common, right? It's very rare that we find everybody in our familial space is willing to deep dive and heal these patterns. So what happens is you can take on that you can take on that space for your family. And the deeper you go, the greater healing that you'll find as a unit, the greater communication you'll see arises from when you spend time with family. And most importantly, the more you'll begin to see them through a lens of compassion. I specifically say family because I think these days since COVID have been they have put a greater spotlight on what is family because it's smushed it's smushed families into the house together in a much more concentrated way. And the family units being stressed by things like hyperinflation and a lack of mental health care access and allopathic healthcare access. So all the things that we know are going on. So
And Alexis, what is a heart wall?
a heart wall is when we have when we disassociate the most, I would say, is when we're going to create a heart wall. When we have something that's just so impactful that not only does it become trapped, but a very distinctive aversion is created to that thing, a really extreme imbalance. And so those heart walls can just be bricks and bricks and bricks of 150 trapped emotions. A heart wall can be 2 trapped emotions. It just depends on how intense that experiences was and how your subconscious chose to process it. But it's literally an energetic force field that you create around your heart of that vibration of that trapped energy.
Great information. Now, in my work, I'll often find broken heart. And
Mhm.
when someone's heart is broken and you shut that down energetically, there's only one of two reasons. You're either punishing yourself or you're protecting yourself, or actually sometimes both, right? So you're talking about the heart wall, and we have to realize compassionately those are defense mechanisms that we humans go into when we've had so many emotions that are just that break your heart, right?
100%. And the body, because it's a communication directly with the subconscious, it will also say sometimes, no, this cannot be removed right now. For example, if you're coming and receiving sessions, but you're currently in a situation of domestic violence or abuse, you need part of that heart wall to be able to show up every day until you've figured out a plan for however you're going to move forward. But, if you try to meet that with compassion and hugs, you don't necessarily have the capacity to protect yourself from immediate danger. So the subconscious will, find it a lot with kids. Kids are so we come into this world, we're so light and we're so bright and we're so open. And you'll remove trapped emotions from kids who have to step right back into junior high, who have to step right back into high school. And so a lot of times you'll hit this wall and they'll be like, don't take these things down. I need this frustration because I'm really scared to show up tomorrow. So I need this anger to drive me. I need to hold on to it so I can protect myself in these situations. So what you're saying is very real, and the subconscious will be very quick to that's one of the things that makes this process so safe is that it's a direct communication with your record keeping system. So there's no way to get it wrong. And there's no way where it's going to do harm to you. You might burst into tears for 30 seconds, but it's no way for it to do you that deep harm. There's no space for re-traumatizing.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. Our guest today has been Anne Alexis, sharing with you today about the emotion code. And you can find out more about Anne Alexis and her wonderful work at www.coachanalexis.com. And remember, when you take the time to release emotions, whether they're conscious or subconscious or buried in your body, you're going to heal yourself naturally. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.